The Draconids are an ancient group of people within Hoenn that you may know for calling upon Rayquaza in Earth's greatest time of need. But what if I told you they had done far more than just praise that sky serpent? That they, in fact, control the entire world. After all, they were one of the first groups of people to establish themselves within Hoenn, so they must have a lot of history that they're keeping quiet on. We can see their influence in Johto as they built the embedded tower. The Dragon Clan leader of Johto also wears a Rayquaza upon their helmet. We can find a man in Alola who can teach Mega Rayquaza's signature move. And with Drasna of the Kalos Elite Force seeming to be of draconic blood but being from Sinnoh, we have even more questions to answer. And so I'm here to prove to you how they established dragon tamers all over the world, that they were the ones to seal away Regigigas and all of its creations, and overall how the Draconids changed the world of Pokemon forever. Howdy there, I'm Krillic, and this idea actually came about thanks to the different deep dives that I conducted during my Pokemon Iceberg series and has since been marinating in this head of mine. So I'm already ready to begin with explaining who are the Draconids for those of you that don't know. The Draconids are a tribe of people that live with Dragon-type Pokemon and worship Rayquaza, who they refer to as Dragon Lord. Known members include Zinnia, Aster, Jinga, Renza, Tomatoma, and the Village Elder. The Draconids live in a hidden settlement located underneath Meteor Falls named Meteor Village, which is led by their elder. Now I will note, Jinga, Renza, and Tomatoa, while also only appearing in the manga to my knowledge, are all individuals that serve more as plot than anything, as they work under the Elder on their search for Zinnia. Their reasoning behind their hunt for her is because she claimed the title of Lore Keeper for herself, despite not having the same abilities as a true Lore Keeper. And you might be wondering what a Lore Keeper is. Well, that's a great question all in all. You would think that is just somebody who literally keeps the lore, tells the plot in history of the people, which technically that is true, but there's more to it. Because these three individuals are relatively justified through their tradition in hunting Zinnia down, as Rayquaza had already rejected Zinnia. Meanwhile, in the games, the Elder will actually let us know that Rayquaza has repeatedly saved the world from disaster with the power that would later be named Mega Evolution. The following are her words within the games. Yes, I am one of the Draconid people, one of those ancient folk tasked with passing down the knowledge of Mega Evolution, with the great lore of Lord Rayquaza, who was the beginning of all. Since times long gone, Hoenn has repeatedly suffered great disasters. At times, the destruction took the form of a huge meteoroid, which fell upon our land from distant space. At other times, the primal reversion of our own super ancient Pokemon brought us to the brink of destruction. Each time, Lord Rayquaza has saved us from doom. The chosen Lore Keeper, standing before a stone that shone with rainbow light, offered up a wish to the Great One, and Lord Rayquaza's body was suffused with a brilliant light and transformed. In its transformed state, Rayquaza's power was more devastating than ever before, overcoming even the super ancient Pokemon with all their primal power. Yes, it does indeed. A Pokemon, a person, a stone of power, the bonds that tie them all together. The transformation of the Pokemon that occurs as a result of this phenomenon was called Mega Evolution by later peoples. Which you likely know this story already, and we'll talk about it more later as a summary that'll allow us to dig into more ideas. But this is just talking about, hey, meteors came down, Rayquaza saved us, oh, then another came down, and then that one's the one that unleashed primal energy upon the land, and that's when they went into their primal reversion forms, which was not seen since the ancient times before humanity was even created, back when the planet itself was being created and Groudon and Kyogre needed to actually form or help form the land and the sea. And then finally, we see it again in the modern day. The Lore Keeper is the one who has inherited the knowledge and power to summon Lord Rayquaza when disaster imperils the world. The true Lore Keeper of the current generation is the one called Zinnia. The disaster that now approaches our planet, as it has twice before, Zinnia has been trying for some time to avert it in her own way. To draw Rayquaza to our sphere, she joined a certain organization that sought to revive the super ancient Pokemon. She taught them the secrets needed to bring back these threats and summon the great dragon itself. And now it seems she travels the land, scouring the world for keystones. This is describing Zinnia as going undercover within Magma and Aqua and giving them all the information they need in order to bring them back. Where are their orbs being stored? How much power do you need? How do you truly control them? Also, that way she can use them to save the world itself. Balance must rule this world. History is doomed to repeat itself. While our people have overcome many disasters in the past, it was through great sacrifice. Yet we have continued to struggle to preserve peace for as many years as we can. This is how we have protected this world upon which we now live. People, Pokemon, all nature, and yes, even you. I do not know exactly what you plan to do, but do you believe that you are not sacrificing anything for your own protection? Zinnia will follow her convictions until the very end, even knowing the sacrifices that they will require, even if this sacrificial blade is leveled to her own heart. And we keep coming back to this idea of sacrifice. Sacrifice oneself for the great of others. Sacrifice oneself for the protection of yourself. Sacrifice something in order to get something. And we'll come back to a lot of that later. Despite the Elder accepting Zinnia as lore keeper, others within the Draconid clan do not. And we see that Rayquaza cannot be powered fully by Zinnia and does not accept Zinnia as a partner, going as far in the manga as to actually attack her directly despite all her efforts, as she is rejected as lore keeper by almost literally everybody except the Elder. Rayquaza flat out not only strikes her, but after just having her hang up in the air, I'm pretty sure she's bleeding, she is saying, I'm not gonna give up. I need you to accept me as a lore keeper. We need to save the planet. Rayquaza flat out blasts her. It's pretty freaking brutal, all in all. So then if Zinnia, who is aiming to save Hoenn, if not the world, is being rejected from the role as lore keeper, then technically who is the true lore keeper? Who would Rayquaza accept? Well, we don't actually have to look far, as it is in fact Aster. And no, I'm not speaking about that adorable little Whismur she has that seemingly calls her mom, but rather who Aster is named after. Being a Draconid woman we never see, who bears special powers and who held the position of lore keeper before Zinnia. Someone who had passed away, but we get to learn more about them thanks to the manga. She was one of the Draconids and was given the title of lore keeper due to possessing special powers. She had also befriended Rayquaza, the legendary Pokemon revered by the Draconids, and was the only known member of the clan to have permission to ride on top of it. In fact, riding upon Rayquaza is absolutely necessary for a Draconid lore keeper, all because they are meant to ride Rayquaza during times of crisis to stop any asteroid that appears every 1,000 years. A Millennium Comet, if you would. Sounds a little bit like Jirachi, doesn't it? We'll bury that also for now, though. Instead, we'll focus on how the lore keeper rides up into the sky with Rayquaza to stop the meteor. The problem, though, is how they complete this. For as our sky serpent flies into said sky and past our ozone, it itself emits ozone around it so it can continue to function. And this is not an exaggeration. This is literally what Rayquaza does. It is said that while it is great and keeps our atmosphere in top shape, ozone is ultimately, as it is in real life, very deadly to us. We are not to inhale it. Meaning that the lore keeper is required to help Rayquaza Mega Evolve, but then is doomed to die as they save the planet itself. The sacrifice, the sacrificial blade pointed towards one's heart for the greater good of everybody else. This is a tradition that they have kept forever. This is why they claim only a Draconid can ride Rayquaza. It is their burden. They do not want to sacrifice anybody else. Though in the future, there is a way around this thanks to beautiful tech made by Devon Corp, though they weren't always a good corporation. When the Devon Corporation came to the embedded tower with hopes of capturing Rayquaza so that way the Pokemon Association could study it, Aster fought alongside Rayquaza in order to stop them. Though the battle went unseen, Rayquaza was successfully captured and taken away, along with several keystones that Aster had collected. When Zinnia arrived at the tower, she found the area in flames and that Aster had died during the battle. Traumatized by Aster's death, Zinnia began to cry so much that her voice eventually gave out. She also took a partially burnt cloak belonging to Aster as a memento. So yes, the cloak that she wears is the cloak of the past lorekeeper who had died thanks again to the Devon Corporation. And by the way, the Pokemon Association, if you're not aware, is basically the people who run the Pokemon League themselves. It's like, here are the lawyers and the government officials and the politics or politicians of it all that are residing within the Pokemon Association, and then underneath them you have the actual Pokemon League. The Pokemon Association is also noted by Kukui to be the person or the people that he, within Alola, is reaching out to in order to even establish a Pokemon League within Alola by the end of Sun and Moon's story. So you can kind of see why they're incredibly important, but then at the same time, what kind of secrets could they be holding? Though back to Zinnia, and with Aster being now passed away, the title of Lorekeeper was passed down to Zinnia. Despite this, some Draconids were opposed to her becoming the next Lorekeeper, as she was not as strong as Aster and did not possess the abilities needed to stop the meteoroid that was foreseen to crash into the planet, as we have discussed before. Now, as a side note, it is made apparent in the modern day that Kyogre and Groudon were necessary to help keep the planet safe. They were undergoing primal reversion, while Rayquaza was collecting meteorites and attempting to Mega Evolve. Slowly over time this would all occur, so that the trio could work together to save Hoenn and ultimately the world itself. The Draconids understood just how necessary all three of the legendaries were, though they worshipped Rayquaza. This is why the embedded tower exists, to house all three of them so that way they may rest, though Sky Pillar is the sacred point for them to worship their Sky Dragon. I will also note that in the future, when Steven Stone steps up to the plate, he does apologize for the actions of his family's past and Devon Corp as a whole and the Pokemon League, but then he still never fully explains anything he is doing and ends up hurting Pokemon in the process. But what if I were to tell you, as we try to find all of our Draconids, that there are more of them out there that match the Draconid description but are not labeled as Draconids? And I know I'm jumping around quite a bit. I'm going to try and lessen jumping around as much as I can, but it's very vital through this process for you to understand just how many Draconids there are and how far their influence goes. So just bear with me, because there are hidden Draconid people throughout the world. Some might be aware of it while others aren't. No matter the case, they continue to uphold Draconid values. To explain this better, the Draconids are a tribe of people, but are also identified as individuals that worship Rayquaza. We would theoretically then identify them as an ethno-religious group, by definition, being a group of people unified by both a shared ethnicity and a shared religious belief, often with a historical and cultural connection between the two. Think of it this way: if I say Jewish, do you think of the people or the religion? No matter your answer, unless you are of Jewish ethno-religion, you would be unable to draw a clear line, and in all honesty, I am not educated enough to do so myself, more than just the absolute basics. So that is the relative comparison to the modern day that we could imagine. Back to the Draconids though, this understanding of them being an ethno-religious group allows us to look for people who can A, worship Rayquaza, B, match the description of the Draconid people, or C, both. Basically, as long as they follow those Draconid traditions, we're able to track them down, especially if they worship Rayquaza in any capacity. Let's begin with anyone who would match physical descriptions. We're looking for traditional clothing that follows a red, black, and tan color scheme. I would say we're also looking for inky black hair, but out of the 5 confirmed Draconids, only 2 have that hair color. We also have a redhead and a bald man, and then the Elder's hair has assumedly grayed over the many years, probably from extreme stress as well, but
that's still potential information. And in fact, the very first person that comes to mind with all of this is Dracana, otherwise known as Drasna of the Kalos Elite 4. Black hair, dragon tamer, has a similar but not perfect motif coloring similar to their clothing, and she even has full-on dragon claw sandals, which is pretty dope. Now, she does state that her grandparents are from Sinnoh, Celestic Town, and that they taught her about the region's mythology surrounding Dialga and Palkia, the god of time and space, which inspired her to train dragon-type Pokemon. Her team comprises of a Dragalge, Druddigon, Noivern, and Altaria. And while her ace is Noivern, she ditches Druddigon during the Battle Chateau, while the rest are kept at even levels. This isn't really conclusive of anything, but at least we know that Swablu is another small connection to Hoenn. In fact, in the anime, her Altaria is confirmed to be her ace, as it is the one to Mega Evolve. And of course, Swablu and Altaria originating within Generation 3, within Hoenn, these are usually not unintentional mistakes. These things are usually done on purpose and have a meaning behind them. We also know only of her grandparents, which were from Celestic Town, or at least that they are in Celestic Town, but not where her parents are from either, nor is she truly confirmed to be born in any given region. Just that she resides within Kalos and is a pretty calm but incredibly powerful lady. Let's continue following these leads. In fact, let's turn our eyes to Celestic Town now, because we know of a very special champion we all know, love, and fear that hails from it, known as Cynthia. And no, I'm not going to claim that Cynthia or her grandparents are Draconids. They don't revere Rayquaza, and they do not match physical descriptions in the slightest. But that is not to say that Sinnoh was not influenced by the Draconid people. In fact, we find a shrine in the middle of the town that bears a striking resemblance to the shrine found in Ilex Forest that we originally find in Johto. Now, this shrine would belong to Celebi. On one hand, it makes sense that the Guardian of Time would have a place of rest in a town that the God of Time is worshipped, but there's more to this. The fact that they copied the structure, the fact that it is transferred here rather than there being an entirely different structure, has a whole different connotation. Let's take into our understanding of the world of Pokemon. According to our understanding, Kanto, Johto, and Sinnoh are said to not only be close to each other, but are actually connected to each other. Meanwhile, Hoenn is to the southwest of Kanto. So a question we have to answer is, how did the Draconids get from Hoenn to Sinnoh? And it's simple. They slowly migrated through Kanto and Johto to get to Sinnoh. All we truly need is how they made it to Johto itself, which, thanks to their deep connections with both Sinnoh and Kanto, that would allow us to reasonably suspect that if any of the Hoennian people, any of the Draconids, would go from Hoenn to Johto, they would pass through Kanto and potentially move on to Sinnoh. And at the absolute least, we are able to prove that the Draconids had influence in Johto thanks to the presence of a second Sky Pillar. Now, I did mention it earlier, and you'd never know it's technically Sky Pillar as it bears the name of Embedded Tower, or in direct translation, Hidden Tower. So it's not actually Sky Pillar because it's not meant for you to just worship Rayquaza at the highest peak. It is located on Route 47 within Pokemon Heart Gold Soul Silver, and the lore of said tower is as follows. A long time before the events of Heart Gold and Soul Silver, the Embedded Tower was an enormously tall tower built by people who came from the Hoenn region. Its peak was said to touch the sky, and part of it was embedded into the cliffs of Route 47, running deep underground into the ocean, thus connecting the land, the sea, and the sky. Groudon, Kyogre, and Rayquaza. And I was wrong. It turns out it does stab into the sky there, and I misremembered. I apologize. And yes, you can in fact encounter Kyogre, Groudon, and Rayquaza here, though they each have individual and specialized rooms built for them. In the manga, this is revealed to be the location that the Devon Corp and Pokemon Association actually found and captured Mega Rayquaza, which was the same exact event that led to Aster's death. With this, we have confirmation of the Draconids having a deep history with Johto. So if that is the case, then there could be more influence, maybe more influence that they had on the people of Johto? Absolutely, because there is one person in the modern day that Professor Oak cites for their research on Groudon and Kyogre, and that would be Mr. Pokemon himself. The same person that hands us a Pokemon egg that turns out to be a Togepi, an egg that he personally received from the Kimono Girls. So somehow, Mr. Pokemon within Johto is connected to two major plot points from two entirely different regions, both of them involving the religious and historic stories that reside within a respective region, both involving great towers, as here in Johto, we have the story of the Bell and the Brass Towers. This is, again, too much of a coincidence, and when we do receive one of the orbs from him, he states the following: I have something I want you to have, and was just about to send an email to Professor Oak. The thing is, a friend of mine from Hoenn came over to give this to me. That orb has something to do with the ancient ruins located past Signwood City, called the Embedded Tower. But only a handful of trainers can reach there. That's where you come in. Professor Oak thinks highly of you, and you are the proud champion after all. I'm sure you can solve the mystery of the orb and the secret of the ruins. This friend of Mr. Pokemon's has to be someone in high standing with Hoenn, someone who can not only get their hands on the orb, but are also trusted with it. This person would be Steven Stone himself. After all, Steven is very much interested in rare stones in general and would understand the significance of these orbs, having even uncovered the legend of Groudon and Kyogre behind a granite wall within the manga itself, in the same location that we would originally find and meet him in the original Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald games. He knows more than he is letting on, especially when we consider everything that he knows about in the manga. His handing over of the orbs to Mr. Pokemon was a deliberate decision, because Mr. Pokemon, again, is someone who is very educated on the topic of history, tradition, and religion within the regions, as we have come to learn. Why else would he be trusted with a Togepi from the Kimono Girls after all? We could also make the claim that travel would have been completed from Johto to Sinnoh thanks to the handiwork of our other ancient group of people, being the Celestica people. These individuals worshipped Arceus and are partially behind the creation of three major structures within the Pokemon world: the Temple of Sinnoh, which would eventually get blown up and become Spear Pillar, the Ruins of Alph in Johto, and the Sinjo Ruins, which are between Johto and Sinnoh. It likely serves as a safe passage between the two lands, and this is not the only time we would have ancient ruins that are capable of this. But again, more stuff we need to come back to later. As a mini recap, because there's so much dense information, Draconids originate in Hoenn, travel to Johto through Kanto, create the Embedded Tower, and then arrive in Sinnoh. Meanwhile, in the modern day, Mr. Pokemon is a trusted individual between Johto and Sinnoh regarding legendaries, but we can't really derive more information from him. Luckily, all of this was just a stepping stone that would lead us to the next claim that I'm going to make. The dragon tamers of Johto are descendants of the Draconids. And this time, I'm going to start with the smoking gun of this claim, the master of the Dragon Tamer clan. The same master or elder that we find within Blackthorn City after we battle against Claire and she throws her big hissy fit when we defeat her in a Pokemon battle. Because while in the games he's just some old man surrounded by other old men that nobody cares about, in the manga he is shown as an old man that nobody but a translator can understand, but which is kind of funny, actually, now that I think about it, because I kind of imagine, you know, little Animal Crossing sounds coming from his mouth, and it's just... And then the translator goes, "Ah, yes, here's the entire lore of our people, paragraphs upon paragraphs of information," after he only spoke for about 2 seconds. But, breaking away from that, I immediately want you to realize that the Grandmaster, the elder of the Dragon Clan within Johto, wears a helmet with Rayquaza on it. Not any other dragon, no, Rayquaza. And I cannot even begin to explain to you the sheer confusion and shock that I had upon first seeing the Dragon Clan elder and him also being the grandparents of both Claire and Lance. And before you get confused, no, I mean, Claire and Lance aren't siblings, they are cousins in every form of media, except for the anime, to my understanding. This means, though, at the very least, the Draconids helped build Blackthorn City. But I am confident in my claim that throughout their migration, they simply had some people who decided to stay within the city as it was built and continue their bloodline here. From here, though, we can find a slew of our other descendants that are related to the Draconids as it all begins to unravel. Considering the Dragon Tamer clan are descendants or have general blood relation to the Draconid people, then we can expand our reach even further through all the people who are at least traditional Dragon Tamers. We've already made our claims that Lance and Claire are of the Draconid descent, but now I bring to you the claim that another Elite Four member is a Draconid. Generations 9's one and only Hassel is a Draconid. Hassel is a descendant of a long line of Dragon-type trainers in an unnamed far-away region. We do know that Galar is incredibly far from the original 4 regions. He ran away from home as a youth to pursue a dream of making music before becoming a member of the Elite Four in the Paldea region, as well as an art instructor at the academy. Hassel is shown to be friendly, but very emotional, as he bursts into tears of joy when defeated by the player. He is an old friend of gym leader Brasius of Artisan. Now, during his Bond story, a Dragon Tamer arrives at the academy to get Hassel back home, bearing resemblance to the classic Dragon Tamers that we are actually aware of, Cape and all. This Tamer begins claiming his father, the head of the family, is feeling ill, and Hassel should be taking his place as the head of the family. Through interactions with the player, Hassel gains the confidence to confront the Dragon Tamer, realizing her words about his father's deteriorating health were lies in another attempt to get him to come home, and swearing to stay at the academy to teach. Now, I'm not saying that his father is the Dragon Clan leader, but rather the Dragon Clan, as many clans may be, are constructed of multiple smaller families, each family having their own specialization, having their own traditions within the greater clan itself. This is not something that is completely foreign to any clans or groups of people, so we can continue with the idea that his father was probably one of the other old men that were on the sidelines, you know? We can also support this further as the goal of most of these Dragon Tamers is to attain the status of their greatest member, Kanto and Johto Pokemon League champion Lance. Just by looking at his design, we can see he has some similarities to both Lance and Claire, though he leans a little bit more towards Claire thanks to his hairstyle. The only thing that throws me off, though, is how he has an accent that is very Shakespearean, very Old English. Oh, Galar, another place with large castles and Old English being something that would be absolutely plausible. Because when we look at more Dragon Tamers here, we find that even Raihan and Lance have similar clothing. Let's at least, with that realization, at least stop and finish out Hassel, because there actually isn't a lot more to say about him, other than his clothing being reminiscent of both Lance and Claire, half cape, you name it. As such, sure, let's move on to talk about Raihan and Lance. Simply put, Lance has admitted that his own outfit is based on Raihan and his gym trainer's outfits. The more complicated and generally frustrating bit that we have when analyzing all of these relations between the Dragon Tamers, the Draconids, and everybody else is the fact that we don't really know the definitive ages of all these characters. So I can't precisely create even a basic speculative family tree. All I can do is say we have a lot of family lines going on here as we continue to expand it. What's most important is to understand that Lance, at least to the anime, had worked under Raihan working at his gym, and that is what inspired his clothing, meaning that Lance, as a Draconid, touched down in Galar. In fact, we have so far confirmed that they started in Hoenn, likely traveled through Kanto, but have been in Johto, Sinnoh, Kalos, Galar, and Paldea so far. As we continue, we begin seeing people who are farther and farther from the traditional physical characteristics we are familiar with. But we can still find them, and we can absolutely see their influence on other regions. because the Draconids have had an influence on Unova. This is proven without a shadow of a doubt through two simple links. One is that we can find our lake guardians, Mesprit, Uxie, and Azelf, by going to the Lake of Being within Unova, which is said that the deepest parts connect to Sinnoh. The second link is what we find within the Pokemon manga. Both Drayden and Iris are called back to Johto's Blackthorn City in order to be trained by the Dragon Tamer clan there. In fact, Iris, in any other version, is said to be from a village of dragons, but in the manga, she is said to be, and shown to be, from Blackthorn City specifically, a place that could be described as a mysterious village cut into a rock face. This, by all means, can show that Iris likely has the blood of the Draconids in her veins. I mean, she's literally called the girl who can understand the hearts of dragons. You can't make this up. Though what's odd is that I can't confirm the same for Drayden. Drayden is honestly a massive mystery, for he and his family were given the knowledge and duty to protect information and items related to the original dragon. The same dragon that would split and become Zekrom and Reshiram, in addition to Kyurem being left behind like the leftovers that it is. Though no matter how far I dig, I can never find the exact reason as to why he is allowed this information, why he is given the incredibly important items related to the dragons and the original dragon, or why any of it links to him or anything links from him. The closest we have is literally just the champion Alder and Iris herself. It's almost as though he is part of a third party that are not related to the Draconids, but were trusted by this long line of dragon tamers in general. The closest, actually, now that I think about it, would probably be that he is called the Spartan Mayor. Yeah, Sparta was part of the Roman Empire to my knowledge, so maybe that's where the attachment is. Maybe he is somehow related more to the Celestica people, and we just haven't realized it, but that's incredibly loose connections with no actual proof behind it. Nothing to really support it. Despite that, though, if we go with the assumption that he is some third-party individual unrelated to the Draconids, maybe unrelated to the Celestica people, it would still make sense, considering the people of Unova's past all but worshipped the original dragon, meaning they would have been a separate ancient people from our Draconids. This is the assumption that we will go with, as this makes Unova the least influenced location under the Draconids, or at least it seems that way. So I was in the middle of editing at this point, and I just remembered that there's one topic I did not talk about. Ignore my incredibly messy hair, I took a shower. But Zinnia flat out asks you, are your choices, are they based on the ideals you cling to, or are they based on actual truths? Truths versus ideals being a major play within the games of Unova, as you talk about Reshiram being truth and Zekrom being ideals, the inner turmoil of N, the ancient heroes of Unova. And what that could really mean, I'm not entirely sure about, but I just wanted to make sure I put that out there, because, again, that's another link from Unova to the Draconids clan, which, considering its attachment to Unova, and Unova's attachment to Sinnoh, there may be a small chance, not a great one, that the Draconids are the reason for the connection from Sinnoh to Unova, that easy and fast travel pathway that is said to exist deep within the caves that exist there. One other individual that I cannot confirm beyond a reasonable doubt is someone we meet in Alola, but is not from there, and that would be Ryuki. Ryuki is a rock musician who has traveled to Alola from another region beyond the sea in order to spread his fame. He is one of the trainers who can challenge a player for the title of Pokemon Champion in the Pokemon League rematches. In his concept art, he does have an Aerodactyl, and in Pokemon Masters EX, Ryuki mentions that in addition to Alola, he has also visited Johto and Unova. We also see him with a Dragonite and a Garchomp as part of his team, so he gets incredibly hard to pinpoint exactly where he's from, and of course he won't tell us anyway. He isn't necessarily vital to the Draconid's influence, but if you're gonna become a Dragon Tamer, it is often said that you are to visit Blackthorn City in order to truly learn how to be a proper dragon tamer. In my findings now, unless I discover something later on, we only have one other person who is a Draconid. Though this individual is a Draconid in both the religious and ethnic sense and is found in Seafolk Village within Alola. This would then mean that we have a Draconid in every single region. And the place in which we find this individual is described as the village of a wandering people who live on ships. They all seem to love living free and unfettered. This isn't a fishing village. This is a village where people from all over the world travel to and from. And it is here where we find a veteran who could teach the move Dragon Ascent. Dragon Ascent is the signature move of Rayquaza. It is a move that is known only by individuals that are trusted members of the Draconids. This is shown in the Pokemon Adventures manga, as Ruby shows he has the scroll containing Dragon Ascent, and the Draconids are surprised as he should not have it. In fact, the only reason he does have it is because he was actually stealing it from Zinnia. And as a side note, it's really cool that in the manga, it's shown that TMs were inscribed into discs, and before then, that they were written in the unknown language script onto scrolls and other objects, and by showing them to a Pokemon, the script would literally float off of the page and grant the Pokemon mastery of the skill you are teaching them. Back to Dragon Ascent though, these special dragon moves are only ever passed down to trusted individuals, as we see a similar process with another incredibly important dragon move named Draco Meteor. In the case of Dragon Ascent, Zinnia and her grandmother can teach Rayquaza this move, and a man in a red shirt within Seafolk Village can as well. In fact, in the same Poke Center in which we find that man in the red shirt, we also find an ace trainer that can teach the move Draco Meteor, which creates a second hidden link between the Draconids and the Celestica people. The first one, of course, being Drasna from the Kalos Elite 4. In all honesty, while I have no proper proof of what I am about to claim, I would like to at least make the claim or opportunity that the Celestica people and the Draconids were the ones to create the Sinnoh ruins. I just need more information than what has been revealed to us within the games, manga, and anime to properly solidify this concept. As such though, we can move on now, as we can see that the Draconids are in, again, every single region and have specified members from their own clans that represent them, whether it be obvious representation or secret representation. And we can finally dig into what the Draconids did throughout all of their globe trotting. We begin in Hoenn, and with a story you are again likely familiar with, and you've seen a number of times through my videos before this one in particular, we are of course in need of recounting the story anyway of the Draconids and their worship of Rayquaza to properly put this all together. For every 1,000 years, a meteor falls upon the lands, and every 1,000 years, both Kyogre and Groudon rise from their slumber. Though now I've finally understood the true complete story. I will be using the synopsis organized from Bulbapedia for this, but then be adjusting as necessary for the full story as we now know it. At the beginning of the Pokemon world, Primal Kyogre and Primal Groudon were formed from the natural energy in the region, and then proceeded to fill the sea and create the land, respectively. Meanwhile, Rayquaza was formed from the minerals in the ozone layer, where it resided since then. And of course, it continues to create ozone, and it's why we have an atmosphere. A chance meeting turned the Kyogre and Groudon individuals into rivals, and a conflict for dominance over the world began. This battle continued until Rayquaza came down to Earth and quelled it, forcing the two to retreat into their own caverns, where they slumbered in for many years. 2,000 years prior to the events of Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, Hoenn was plagued by meteor showers, which turned the home place of the Draconid people into Meteor Falls. Important location. The region was overflowed with natural energy, and Primal Groudon and Primal Kyogre awakened to fight over it. They ravaged the earth and were only defeated and put to slumber once again by Rayquaza when the Draconid summoned it through a wish on a meteor. The people of the region then began to revere Rayquaza as their savior. 1,000 years prior to Oris, the former king of Kalos, AZ, traveled to Hoenn and planted a tree in front of the Cave of Origins entrance. Yes, guys, gals, and non-binary pals, we in fact have confirmation that the Draconids even managed to indirectly influence Big Man AZ himself. Future Krillin is back again because he forgot to mention that, the whole situation regarding AZ, because after Sky Pillar, Zinnia tells the player that about 1,000 years ago, a tall visitor from a distant land witnessed how Mega Rayquaza stopped a fight between Primal Groudon and Primal Kyogre. He is quoted to have said, "It is the Delta, born of the great disturbances in this world. By the bonds born of mankind's wish and the power of the stones, it will calm the troubles that plague the world." And while there's no other extension from this, the only other piece that occurs is that AZ plants what is then known as the Tree of Life and will then grow for over 1,000 years. The same Tree of Life in which we would find the flower of Eternal Floette. And that is where Floette waits until AZ has come to the full realization of what he has done in the past and comes to terms with it while also improving as an individual. We only know this because the timeline does show that Oris occurs right before the main events of Pokemon X and Y. But the fact that AZ himself is aware of the Delta Pokemon, is aware of the power that is within Rayquaza itself, has led a lot of people to question whether or not AZ himself is a Draconid. And I will make the claim that while he likely is not a Draconid, considering he is described again as the visitor from a distant land, he is somebody that knows the ancient history. He is one of the people who represents ancient history within the world of Pokemon. And as such, it makes perfect sense that he would be the one to hold on to history that even the Draconids may be aware of, or at least rumors that would circulate the entire world. After all, we see similar religions or similar myths, similar cryptids, and similar stories overall from region to region of the real world. So what brought AZ to know about the Delta Pokemon? That is something that we are unaware of and will hopefully get answers to in the future. Actually, if AZ is 3,000 years old, he may have actually witnessed some of the events that have occurred all the many times that Kyogre and Groudon went on a rampage or the meteor came down. He may have witnessed all of this before multiple times. It's a possibility. A primal, energy-filled meteor struck the region, creating a gigantic crater where Sootopolis City would later be built in. Primal Groudon and Primal Kyogre awakened to fight over it once again. The people of Hoenn wished on Rayquaza to save them once again, and using a special meteorite, Rayquaza performed the world's first Mega Evolution, defeated the two, took away their primal states, and forced them back to sleep again. Later on, the Sky Pillar was built in Rayquaza's honor, and the Draconids promised to pass down the prophecy that in 1,000 years, the meteor would return again. The red and blue orbs were then created to prevent the reawakening of Kyogre and Groudon, and are left at Mount Pyre for safekeeping. Those orbs would then be protected by selected people who we would even meet at Mount Pyre, an old couple that we would eventually learn are the grandparents of Phoebe, another member of the Hoenn Elite Four. Trust me, I thought I was done finding Draconids as well, but no, they're literally everywhere. And let's watch this, Phoebe, we can confirm, is a Draconid, as she tells us we made a lasting impression upon her grandmother who lives on Mount Pyre. The only elderly individual we would make a lasting impression on would be the one who is aware of our actions as we try to stop Team Magma from using one of the orbs. But simultaneously, we also learned that they aren't just grandparents to Phoebe, they're also grandparents of Tate and Liza, more gym leaders of Moss Deep City's gym within Hoenn. All three of them even have dark hair, but not perfectly black hair. So what's the explanation for all of this? Once again, there are definitely more Draconids out there. There are numerous lore keepers as well, at least from what we see in The Wish, which is seen in Pokemon Generations. There are people overall being mostly lost to the past. This could all just be simply due to time, or even just mixing amongst the public, or going to entirely different regions as we have discussed. I couldn't find any form of concern from the Draconid people regarding the loss of their people or the disappearance of them like we do with the Celestica people, so I imagine that they know where their bloodline has gone, but they haven't openly revealed it for some reason. This is why all these Draconids are so deeply hidden. We have people who are, half Draconid, quarter Draconid, you name it. It's just going and going and going as they mix with the public. We can even look deeper into this knowledge and the knowledge that Tate and Liza have a Lunatone and Solrock, which originate from Meteor Falls, having first been discovered there, and is where the Draconids originate from. Now, this also led me to another individual we can speak on who is from Sootopolis City, the shining star and champion himself, Wallace. In Pokemon Emerald, Wallace is first encountered at the Cave of Origin, where he guides the player to the Sky Pillar to awaken Rayquaza. Once the player reaches Sky Pillar, Wallace will have opened its locked entrance, allowing the player to enter the tower. During the Delta episode, Wallace is revealed to be a descendant of the ancient people of Sootopolis, making him one of the very few people capable of opening the sealed entrance to the Sky Pillar. Meaning, without any remnants of doubt, Wallace has Draconid blood in his veins. From here within Hoenn, you likely know the story as you've already played the games, and if you don't, well, here we go. Kyogre and Groudon awaken thanks to Archie and Maxie, but at least within the Oris timeline, those two realize the error of their ways and assist with destroying the meteor. Zinnia, though, had assisted them in their efforts, as we talked about, as Rayquaza continued to reject her, but she refused to give up. In fact, something I love that is presented in the manga is that the Draconids despise Moss Deep Space Center's plan to just teleport the meteor away. Zinnia specifically is the one to talk about this, calling them unimaginative, which I think is a mistranslation and is more to call them thoughtless or careless or even inconsiderate, as they aren't thinking about where the Delta meteor would then go if they teleported away. Will it slam into another planet? Will it hurt other people, other Pokemon? Will it just destroy another island? We don't know where it's going. You're just teleporting it away. Instead, it is truly best to pair with Rayquaza, as the legend states, and destroy the meteor together. Long story short, Rayquaza Mega Evolves for the second time in known history, the meteor is destroyed, Deoxys comes out, Deoxys gets destroyed, the day is saved. You know the story, and if you didn't, you do now. Though the influence of the Draconids doesn't end there, as this is just scratching the surface. A theory I have held on to now for a very long time is that the Draconids, in their moment of need, in their realization that the world was going to end, that they needed to be saved, that all of humanity, all of Pokemon needed to be saved, they sang out to the skies, they wished to the stars, and that led to the creation of Jirachi itself. This all actually begins with the fact that the meteor that keeps coming down to the planet occurs every 1,000 years. The Millennium Comet doing the same thing as per its name, Millennium, 1,000 years. This comet is what Jirachi draws its power from. Otherwise, it just continues to sleep for those 1,000 years, only to wake up and grant wishes, or to wake up to a pure voice. This pure voice would absolutely be the wishes of the Draconids, acting as a singular unit, a singular wish, a singular voice, when they needed Rayquaza to save the world from Primal Kyogre and Primal Groudon. I've always made the bet that since we have a number of Pokemon that are living concepts, that a single powerful wish, the first real wish of humanity, would be the one that brings Jirachi into existence. And of course, I always tie it back to the title of the Pokemon Generations episode, where Zinnia tells us the story of her people and summons Rayquaza, the episode itself being called The Wish. To add to all of this, Jirachi has been shown to animate seawater in the shape of Kyogre and even power the Mega Groudon as it drew energy from people, Pokemon, and the planet itself and caused mass destruction. That Mega Groudon looking very much similar to Primal Groudon. Also, yes, I know I'm kind of flying through this one just a little bit, but that's primarily because I've talked about this specific theory a number of times recently in the middle of a number of my other videos like the Iceberg series. Instead, though, I will say, Jirachi used its first ability as Wishmaker when it was first born to power up Rayquaza's Mikado organ, grants it Mega Evolution, being the first Mega Evolution in history, in order to grant the wish of the Draconid people and save the world. We can support this even further from the idea that Jirachi typically does not actually create nor destroy. Jirachi simply moves one thing to someplace else, whether that be animating the seawater as a singular unit, or by powering up the Mega Groudon, the energy was taken from somewhere else. Plants, people, the planet. So, if the Millennium Comet is something that has a lot of power, and Jirachi wakes up to it and draws that power in, then all it's doing is taking in the power from the Millennium Comet, giving it to Rayquaza, and Rayquaza's coming in Mega form to destroy that meteor. And it's just something that occurs every 1,000 years on the dot. And if Jirachi doesn't wake up to help with that, then it's up to Kyogre and Groudon, having absorbed enough primal energy to assist Rayquaza with destroying the meteor, as it does in the manga. But with that, how about we move on to the theory that made me begin all of this research in the first place. The Draconids sealed all of the Regis away, Regigigas, and all of its other giant children, Regirock, Registeel, Regice, Regidrago, and Regieleki. But Krillin, weren't the Regis considered incredibly dangerous and feared by the people? Well, yes, but not immediately. In fact, they were considered vital individuals who helped humanity time and time again. The problem with the Regis is not the Regi Pokemon themselves, it's humanity and how they perceive these giants. Because with our boy Regigigas, while he may be able to control the other 5 golems even if trainers have captured them, he is a pretty slow mover and likes to take big ol' naps. This is not an exaggeration. Big Papa Regi has the ability Slow Start after all, and has fallen asleep for an undetermined amount of time. What we know is that Regigigas fell asleep in Snow Point Temple, which is found within Sinnoh. Considering what we know about it and how important it is seen, we can easily assume that the temple was built for Regigigas. We know this because there are statues that depict and reference the other 3 original Regi Pokemon, though now those statues are used to seal away Regigigas itself, or in our case, release Big Daddy Regi. The TLDR of that is that Regigigas does big boss things, takes a nap, and the rest of the unknown people seal it away while it is taking a nap. Imagine taking your nap and waking up to being locked in your own room by the time you wake up. No windows, no doors, not even a doorknob. But before we even get into proving who sealed them, or even where the rest of the Regis are, we have to ask ourselves, why were they sealed? What was the event that caused this? Our answer simply lies with an understanding that back in the times of Hisui, the Celestica people are likely the ones to have built Snow Point Temple. They would have been the ones to have learned about Regigigas through their worship and understanding of Arceus, though when they departed from the lands due to conflict from the Diamond and Pearl clans, the history of Snow Point was lost. It is also understood through the old verses found throughout all of Hisui that Pokemon were eventually used more as tools or feared rather than seen as equals. This may have eventually led to the fear of Regigigas, as it would have taken control back from the people who caught the other Regis and used it against them. When in reality, what probably happened is Regigigas just needed to take control of the Regis for something more important, and then the people became afraid, resulting in them sealing the Regis away. But above all else, I wouldn't like to just believe one or the other. I would like to believe that we have a different in-place reasoning considering what it takes to unseal Regigigas in other versions, because Snow Point's temple eventually becomes buried over time, its multitude of floors simply becoming basements, and the only way to gain access to Regigigas is by having Regirock, Registeel, and Regice with you, the three acting like keys, though they all have to be nicknamed, something that we usually associate with as a sign of a bond between yourself and your Pokemon. So why? Why would you allow it to be unlocked? Well, before we answer that, let's dip into those old verses I mentioned, as I've talked about them before, and they provide deeper insight and understanding as to how the mindsets of the Celestica people worked and how the Regis may have originally been seen, maybe even giving us insight to potentially the minds of the Draconids and then the opposing actions of the clans that moved into Hisui. When first this land was formed, Man and Mon lived happily, sharing all that they could see, by kind acts born and warmed. One Pokemon then proposed that they should always be ready to help humans should they need, and let their presence be disclosed. And that is why to this day, not all Pokemon do flee. When a human they do see, they leap out where tall grasses sway. The one Pokemon is not a singular random Pokemon. There is a reason the word one starts that line in the verse, and it's capitalized, because it is the Great One, Arceus, who stated that Pokemon should always be ready to help humans in need and to openly show that they are there, which is why Pokemon are said to jump out of the grass at us. But this isn't to mean every Pokemon is forced to be under us, but rather they are to be our equals, that they are to test our resolve, our wisdom, intelligence, willpower, strength, you name it. This is why every single time we encounter a Pokemon, we battle and aim to catch them as they break out of every Pokeball, as we try to prove that we are true equals. But even after we catch them, it doesn't mean that they're our friend. It is still up to humanity to prove that they see Pokemon as equals every single day. Now, another old verse will grant us insight to all of this, as there is that transition from loving Pokemon, from being partners with Pokemon, from living happily together, to the abandonment of that idea that Arceus wanted, once it's shone upon us all with all the warmth of welcome sun. But now we weep, to grief we fall, starved of light now it has gone, and some they go, despair withal, in search of it they reel and run. They quit their hearths, abandon hall, and leave our lands to be undone, and when they're gone beyond recall, this land will be a home to none. This land will only ever be a home to Pokemon. The light of the one true Arceus once shone upon humanity with warmth and welcome, but now it has gone. Humanity has made a mistake, and as such we continue to desperately cry out and chase the light we cannot see. Some will abandon everything, their homes, their community, their people, and as such they care not for the land, the gift given to them from Arceus, allowing it to instead fall to ruin. And when it does fall to ruin, then the land will only ever be home to Pokemon, for they will always bear with them the gift of Arceus, the divine truth. If you want to know more about the divine truth, go check out my video literally called The Divine Truth. But for now, allow me to summarize what I believe this all means in attachment to Regigigas and the history there. Regigigas took control of the original 3 Regis for a greater purpose from any trainers that may have had them. The ancient Diamond and Pearl clan, maybe some other group. Then they became afraid of Regigigas. This would have all occurred after the Celestica people had fled, and maybe these Regis would have been left behind for a short time, the clan thinking that they could take control of them. They waited until after the event in which Regigigas retook control, and then tried to seal it away as it went to sleep. Unfortunately, this would only grant greater issues in the future, and instead of sealing it completely, the Draconids stepped in thanks to their original connections to the Celestica people and their personal understanding of the Regis within Hoenn, and made Regigigas freeable through the power of the other giants. This way, if a cataclysm were to ever occur, they could free Regigigas. Though if the Regis were being controlled, in order to avoid another moment of great fear regarding the Regis, only a person who has properly bonded with them would be able to meet Regigigas. This is why you have to nickname your Regis to unlock Regigigas. This helps explain why the Temple of Regigigas is there, because it was built to worship it. Why the Regis were seen as great creatures but then feared later on, because they were seen as equals and then controlled and feared by later people who thought that they were just peaceful giants. And then why they were sealed but could be unsealed by collecting the other Regis instead of just flat out completely sealing them like other Pokemon have been in other games. We can support this all even further by looking at the Giant's Bed in Galar, because the only way you can encounter Regigigas in the raid den is by having all 5 of the Regis in your party. Speaking of the 5 other ones, how about we discuss their places of rest and how they're connected? The Hoenn Regis, being Regirock, Registeel, and Regice, should all be fairly straightforward, but our goal is to further support or even discredit the idea that the Draconids sealed them away. After all, it's a bit of an investigation, and I want to be fair about it. Let's just begin with Regirock, who will lead us to answers on Registeel and Regice, as they all have very similar backgrounds or stories. According to legend, Regirock was created by the legendary Pokemon Regigigas using rocks. It used to be worshipped by humans, however, at some point, ancient people started fearing its power and sealed it away. In Hoenn, it was sealed in the Desert Ruins. In Sinnoh, it was sealed in the Rock Peak Ruins, and in Galar, it was sealed in the Rock Peak Ruins. Despite all 3 of these being separate locations, they are all tied together. We'll find similar situations with the other 2. The Desert Ruins requires you to read Braille in order to unseal the chamber. Rock Peak in Sinnoh requires a special event Regigigas and will have a large Regi statue in the back if it is within your party, as long as you have the right Regigigas. You solve the puzzle, which is really just lighting up all the circles on the ground, and then Regirock can be encountered. Then, Rock Peak in Galar is the exact same, though you just need a hint from Peony rather than Regigigas itself. All 3 instances lead us back to Braille, which is of course the gimmick of the Regis, and the people who did leave us instructions to unseal the Regis also left us a story in Braille. They state the following in Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire. Long did we live here in this cave, all thanks to the powerful Pokemon living alongside us. Yet, we sealed that Pokemon away, alone in the dark. We feared it. If you have the courage, if you still hold to hope, open the door, for beyond it, the eternal Pokemon waits. In another translation, they are not called eternal Pokemon, they are called monsters. Once you do solve the puzzle of having Wailord and Relicanth in the given order of your party, you are given additional instructions to encounter the original 3 Regis. Stop and wait, unmoving as time passes you twice. Right, down, then use your strength, which is just, actual literal directions. And then the final one, stand center, aim to the sky with love and hope and time. Aim to the sky. And originating from Hoenn of all places, when even Zinnia states herself that she has always been looking towards the sky even when she was little, the Draconids worship Rayquaza at Sky Pillar. It seems to connect well in my personal opinion, and I guess you could say if you lived within a cave, think of where the meteors did crash down. Think of where Sutopolis is. Think of where Meteor Village is. Think of it. It may not be a perfect cave, but these locations could be where Draconids had resided within. It would also make sense that while they were seen as great beings, they weren't worshipped as these Regis lived alongside the people of Hoenn, and were eventually feared by the people of Hoenn. They did not perform any modern-day great miracle, they were simply powerful creations of a greater being, but they needed to be respected as we have previously discussed. Though, one more reason to have sealed the Regis is in fact the knowledge that the sheer amount of power they have could very well kill their trainer. Even the most experienced of trainers for that matter, because within the manga we find the following. Stephen Wallace and the Elite Four separated into 3 teams of 2 and used Registeel, Regirock, and Regice to contain the energy generated from Groudon and Kyogre's clash and prevent it from spreading throughout Hoenn. This would also line up actually really well with why the Regis were important, why they helped keep people alive, because during the clash, these clashes weren't a one-day thing. In fact, Kyogre and Groudon's clashes were said to be multiple days, if not weeks, in the ancient history, or at least hinted to be that way. And if the Regis are here to help and prevent that energy from destroying everything, it would make sense why Hoenn is even alive to this day. Why it's not just a mess of islands, because the Regis were there to help protect the people. Their efforts lasted for several weeks until It All Ends Now 4, which was a volume within, or a chapter within the Pokemon Adventures manga, when Ruby and Norman ended Groudon and Kyogre's battle with Rayquaza's power, returning the super ancient Pokemon to their slumber. Controlling 3 legendary Pokemon for so long left Steven so exhausted that he collapsed and died soon after. With Steven's passing, Registeel, Regirock, and Regice returned to the wild. This is where we can find that fear being instilled, understanding that not only are they necessary, but by sacrificing yourself to control them, you're sacrificing yourself for the greater good. It aligns with the Draconids' value and why only they should be the ones to be controlling these legendaries, these ancient beasts of Pokemon that exist within our world. Also, imagine every single one of us who had an entire team of legendary Pokemon and how much energy that actually takes to manage. The sheer exhaustion we see in trainers after a Pokemon battle is not just for show. A true bond will result in more power from a Pokemon, but will also take energy from a trainer. That's even more true for Mega Evolution and Battle Bond, but I digress. And I actually believe we've explored as much as we really can with the OG3 without me trying to just extend it more than it needs to be. So how about we move on to the ones that were added in Galar. Within the split decision ruins, we find Regieleki and Regidrago, golems made of pure electric and pure dragon energy in that respective order. Within the games, you can only open the ruins if you have the other 3 OG Regis with you in your party. Even then, you can only choose to have one or the other, Eleki or Drago. Though in the anime, Gary Oak and Go had entered the ruins together with the ability to challenge both of these legendaries and gain the opportunity to catch them both. Now, they both match the classic legend, having been worshipped before being sealed away, though they were limited even further by the ancient people. When we look at Regieleki, the blue rings are insulated and cannot conduct electricity. They've been put on it by ancient people who were tormented by it in order to restrain its powers. It is said that if the rings on its body were to be removed, Regieleki would be able to unleash its latent powers. Regieleki absorbs electrons in order to stay alive, and is said to have the greatest power of any electric Pokemon, being powerful enough to generate all of Galar's electricity. It's a real shame for Chairman Rose, but he isn't our focus anyway. I actually want to dig into these blue rings, but outside of it being a basic but effective method to block energy as opposed to a high-tech option, we have no additional leads. All that it does show us is that it matches the story of ancient people binding Regieleki. For Regidrago, we find something that I think would have led the Draconids here, or at least their influence here. According to legend, Regidrago was created by the legendary Pokemon Regigigas using crystallized dragon energy. Regigigas ran out of crystals after building Regidrago's head, and it was sealed away by ancient people who feared the destruction it would cause should it ever be completed. Due to its body composition, Regidrago is said to have the most powerful dragon-type moves of all Pokemon, along with the power of every dragon Pokemon. If I was somebody who worshipped Rayquaza, let alone was a part of the Dragon Tamer clan, I would be immediately jumping out of my chair and searching for Regidrago, because you're telling me that not only does it have the power of every dragon-type Pokemon, but it also has the strongest dragon-type moves of every dragon Pokemon because it is made up of pure dragon energy, and it isn't even complete. This Pokemon would become the most studied and important Pokemon for dragon tamers throughout the entire world. You could maybe even find out what dragon Pokemon you haven't seen, which ones went extinct, which Pokemon used to be dragon types, such as Ampharos and Sceptile, you name it. And yes, I say used to be dragon types because we get the reference after reference within Pokemon that Mega Evolution helps unlock ancient DNA within Pokemon, meaning that they were once dragon Pokemon. and then later evolved in the Darwinian sense to actually lose that typing. The only way that Regigigas wouldn't immediately become the most studied dragon Pokemon by any of our dragon worshippers is if they already knew about it, that they were the ones to seal it away. I will admit at this point that we may not have a single clue who the Draconids nor the Draconid influenced people within Galar are. The closest we can get is through Raihan, of course, the final gym leader of Galar, who specializes in Dragon-type Pokemon. And as a reminder, Lance based his own clothing on Raihan, meaning there is a strong connection there that is otherwise not explored. And I'll throw in one more piece of thinly connected evidence, admittedly, which is what we have learned early on in the video. Raihan was the only gym battle that you complete a double battle for since we first battled Tate and Liza back in Hoenn. Of course, in the next generation, we would fight Rhyme, who is an absolute goat and does have a double battle, but either way, it is an interesting connection nevertheless. It may be irrelevant, but I wanted to make sure I'm presenting as much info as possible that allows you to have fun with, agreeing or disagreeing with anything that I'm saying today. This concludes what we can speak about regarding the Draconids in Galar, though let's move on as we can speak about their less direct contributions to the world. Moving backwards, in Paldea they really only have Hassel, who isn't really following the Draconid or even the Dragon Tamer tradition, though in Alola, what I find most curious is that we have the Ace Trainer that can teach Draco Meteor and a red-shirted individual that can teach Dragon Ascent on Pony Island, which is the same island in which we fight a Dragon Totem Pokemon, and again, no coincidences here. Though even when I dig into the past kahunas of the island, they are not Draconids themselves. It seems that Pony Island is more of a resting point for any water-traveling Draconids, or any other people for that matter, and we only have the one person there in the red shirt linking Alola to the Draconids, and then the Ace Trainer to the Celestica people with each other. The last piece of Alola that really links back to the Dragon Clan is knowing that people from Kanto and Johto traveled incredibly far to Alola and were the ones to establish Heihei City itself. Though there are no additional bits of interesting or relevant information that we can find, this is important as Heihei would have potentially been the first city of Akala, if not at least one of the first. A curious thing to note is that when we tie in that Celestica people connection and the Draco Meteor connection, is that the craters in Celestica Town were created by Cynthia's grandmother in the manga as she was training with her Pokemon to better learn the move. Though you can learn the move from Grandma Wilma, who lives on Route 210 in Sinnoh currently, but used to live in Blackthorn City. To quote, in Pokemon Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum, Brilliant Diamond, and Shining Pearl, she mentions that she used to live in a famous city of Dragon Tamers until she moved to Sinnoh, and due to this, she is able to teach the move Draco Meteor to the player's Dragon-type Pokemon if its friendship is maxed out. Wherever we find the Dragon Tamers from Blackthorn, we find the blood of the Draconids, and this mixes things up a lot. So I pose the following to you. Cynthia is still not a Draconid, though depending on when Grandma Wilma would have moved to Sinnoh, we would find Draconid blood in the area and potentially even within Celestic Town itself. This would bring about an additional connection between the Celestic people and the Draconid people, while still keeping them as two separate groups of individuals, or two separate clans of individuals. Though this would eventually lead to a mixing of the groups, their history, their collective stories, and their understanding of great dragons within the world of Pokemon. As we move on to Unova, we find a similar, thin, but apparent connection as we once again have Iris, who is once again originally from Blackthorn, at least within the Pokemon Adventures manga. We find that she was considered hyper and out of control as a small child by the elder of the Blackthorn clan, who wears the Rayquaza helmet. Drayden is called in by the elder to take in Iris and train her, where he even takes her claims to become champion seriously, and has her meet champion Alder, for that matter, within Unova. She accepts them as they truly take her seriously, unlike anyone else has, and even say that they see potential in her. And she ultimately begins calling them Grandpa Drayden and Grandpa Alder. So while we find no link for Drayden specifically to be a person of the Draconid line, we meet Alder, who is the spitting image of the ancient hero of Hisui of the Celestica people. Once more, tying the two clans together again. And I will note, now that I think about it, I'm pretty sure you can find a scroll showing the ancient hero within the Galaxy Clan hideouts. Or not the hideouts, their Galaxy Clan HQ. It would make sense that we once again find the Draconids having influence within Unova, as I don't know, if I were to learn that there was an almighty dragon bearing great power that split into multiple dragons, I too would want to learn more about it. In fact, even if Drayden is not of blood within the Draconids, he was still trusted with the splicer required to recombine Zekrom, Reshiram, and Kyurem into the original dragon, and incredible amounts of info regarding them. Also, we have Dragon Spiral Tower there, and we end up once again having just these constant towers for these legendary Pokemon. Dragon Spiral Tower for Zekrom and Reshiram to come back and wait for the heroes to return. We have the Bell and Brass Tower for Lugia and Ho-Oh. We have the towers in Hoenn for Sky Pillar with Rayquaza, and the Embedded Tower for all three of these super ancient trio. There's just all these towers all throughout the world, and the number one link that really exists for all of them is a cultural idea that the closer you are to space is also considered the heavens, and so you can be closer to your god or religion in general as you may deem fit. And if you are worshipping a sky serpent, being Rayquaza, then yeah, of course, you're going to build your tower as high as you can. Now, I will note, in the manga, Drayden does not have the splicer, and instead our main character does. And even he has no idea how he came into possession of it, nor do we ever learn. Maybe he got it through the dream world or something like that. It's just kind of a mess there. But from here, I looked further into Drayden, and even found myself pulling up information on his grandson, Drayton. And this is when things began to spiral again. Again, I understand, video's a little bit jumpy, but hopefully I've been able to make this nice and easy to understand, despite jumping from region to region and family of people to family of people. We find that the pattern on Drayton's cape, which is worn as a waistcloth, resembles the symbol icon that represents the Dragon-type Pokemon within Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee, Pokemon Sword and Shield, Home, and Pokemon Go. Specifically those games. This would have just been a loose tie to Kanto, but it definitely goes deeper. We find that Drayton has a Sceptile on his team, tying him to Hoenn, while also bearing Duraludon as his ace. Drayton's Elite Trial and Battle share similarities to Raihan's Gym Challenge and Gym Battle in Pokemon Sword and Shield in the following ways. For the respective challenges prior to the boss fights, the player faces 3 trainers in double battles who do not use Dragon-type Pokemon exclusively. Both Drayton and Raihan use a number of the Duraludon evolutionary line as their highest level Pokemon. Both of their teams have multiple users of the move Breaking Swipe. Too much of a coincidence to ignore as always, and to top it all off with Iris being taken under Drayton's wing and being an adoptive grandfather to her, Drayton being his actual grandson, his Japanese name is Kakitsubata, from the literal word Kakitsubata being Japanese iris, similar to Shaga, Drayden, being named after a species of iris, also containing an anagram of Tatsu, which basically can be reformed to mean dragon. So it is adorable, in one hand, to think that he may be named after Iris, whose Japanese name is literally just Iris, but there's more through all of that information, especially as Drayton's father and mother are likely living within Unova or Paldea, considering his enrollment in Blueberry Academy, which is considered part of Unova. And while, again, I know I said I'd leave the whole idea of who's related to who in the past and move on, I do find it very strange that Leon, Hop, and Iris do share a lot of physical features. purple hair, darker complexion mainly, but then we add in that Leon's starter and partner Pokemon was a Charmander. And that was before he got sponsored by Chairman Rose. Even in his final team, he may have an Aegislash, Dragapult, Haxorus, one of the unchosen starter Pokemon, which then determines whether he has a Seismitoad, Mr. Rhyme, or Rhyperior, and then finally his Charizard as his ace. There is nothing especially conclusive from this other than pure speculation, but with Haxorus being tied to Iris and Drayden, while Charizard is tied to Kanto, there are some thin red lines that you could start to come up with. Otherwise, that pretty much clears the strongest info that we have regarding the Draconids that would not fall into pure speculation. And I don't want to confuse anybody with pure speculation. As such, what does this actually all mean? What is the summary of everything that I have found and presented to you today? Kanto and Johto have Lance as Elite Four or Champion, and Claire as the final gym leader, the 8th gym. Hoenn has Wallace as part of the Elite Four and Champion, alongside many other relatives within the bloodline found there. Sinnoh has Cynthia, who is not a Draconid, but tied to them through her Celestica blood. Unova has Iris as Champion, and then Drayden, who is not of blood, but strongly associated with the Draconids. Kalos has Drasna as part of the Elite Four. Alola does not have anyone major outside of the one person who can teach Dragon Ascent, alongside the other individual who can teach Draco Meteor, and then Ryuki, who is theoretically from Kanto. Galar has Raihan, who influenced Lance, and Paldea has Hassel, who is part of the Elite Four. This effectively means that we have a Draconid or somebody closely related to the Draconids within a high ranking. We find them in the Elite Four, or we find them as a champion within any of the given regions excluding Alola. Though despite all of that, there are still people from Kanto and Johto who helped found a major city within Alola, and if we assume Ryuki may be a part of the Draconids, he is aiming to topple the charts and become a champion within Alola, meaning that they're trying to place another Draconid in another high place of power. These are people who are major decision makers within the region, within the Pokemon League, the association itself, even, as they have influence with those politicians. People who are considered some of the most powerful individuals of the world, with the most ancient history, with some of the most ancient Pokemon. They built Sky Pillar for Rayquaza. They built the Embedded Tower for all three of the super ancient trio. They influenced the sealing of all the Regis and continue to bear the ancient history of the world. They have a bond with the Celestica people themselves, likely having been a part of the reason why the Sinnoh ruins exist, why individuals around the world continue to learn Draco Meteor and Dragon Ascent, all because people from Hoenn migrated to Johto and established Blackthorn City. There, they built up the Dragon Tamer clan, and that clan continued to spread their knowledge and influence throughout the world. With their leader bearing Rayquaza upon their helmets, Blackthorn City became the place to go to if you were to become a Dragon Tamer, meaning that you were to learn their values, their traditions, and how to fight like they do with respect for the ancient history and our ancient Pokemon being the dragons. These Dragon Tamers then would leave and spread themselves throughout the world, taking major positions of power, protecting legendaries and humanity, and you would have never realized their influence if we never looked deeper into these connections. Thank you so much for watching. I know this video was shorter compared to a lot of my other videos, and I just recently uploaded another short video, but I'm going to dig into some longer videos, as my next two are going to be simply, one, ranking every Pokemon based on edibility. It just sounds fun, it sounds stupid, and it's going to be a bit of a longer one, in addition to finally finishing that overly long iceberg that had over 300 entries in it, and putting an end to that. After that, we'll see what comes next. I'm excited for some more ecology stuff that I might dig into, such as trying to just figure out how the world of Pokemon even works, get into that science, get into that natural, world, and hopefully you enjoy the theories of how the Pokemon world works or how the history of it has been. If you did enjoy, please make sure you do subscribe, share the video with others, share the channel with others, and leave a comment with any arguments for or against anything that I've said. I always like to read what you guys leave behind for me, as I find it's important to intake what is said to me. Any form of proper constructive criticism is always appreciated, and I love reading everyone else's theories in the comments, even if I don't respond to them all the time. If you really enjoyed what you saw today and you want to go the extra mile, you can always become a member of the channel through here or on Patreon, as you do get a number of perks such as behind the scenes content, votes, and more. And that only costs $3 a month and helps support the channel, as YouTube ad revenue is not reliable. One of the perks is actually hearing your name and seeing your name at the credits of every single video, which we're going to do right now in our member shoutout. Starting with all of our gods of hope, big and heals for life and value limited, with all of our champions, Andrew Mercy, Ghostin, Joshua Biggles Wilson, then all of our knights of the court, Crumbo, Fix My Nitrogen, Dylan Perrine, Double Pile, Annie Stone, Allen, Heals for Life and Value Lemon, then all of our wanderers, Edward Kasowski, dang it, Puddin Fox, MN Ranger, Hawthorne, Andrew Tyson, Tashima, Zanzibar, Chef in a Bottle, Justin Green, JV Green, Minnie the Man, Minnie, Tavis, Lamp, Fennica Fox, Benton Dover, Dustmorty, Yamper, Evil Chan, Max Supreme, Octo Shin, Woomy, Charles Reed, Rose the Peak Tan, Tyler, Darius Regan, Silver Lazarus, Supporty Boy, DPM, Pander, Nerders, Freeberg, Lost, Wisteria, Something Kai, Kabutak 123, Haggard and Kadabra, Bach 1000, KO 23, Pre-Ignite, at Cantor, RD, Shiny Blastoise 52, Quill, Final Fantasy 14. Who's that? Knight of the Court. Why are you there? Matt S, Marco Man, Colin Moore, Kieran Trick, Colin Crow, Zyplot, Plushkid, Summon Roy, Nate Conley, Sophie Sams 13, Wise Thumb, York, Score, Blaze, Slat, Slime, Daniel Lova, Quinn, Jude, Ron Ellis, Zinko, Switchy, Speed Noob, Tanapad, Ravi Ramsey, Sardonic, 8-Bit Ducky, Pokeoni Tracker, Soylent Beat, Chris Wills, Great Lakes Feathercoat, Nick Stars, Evan Karasu, Idana, Traffy, Starbreed, Foster Davis, Zane, Edom, Black Bear Force Energy, Just Another Vegan on YouTube, Sci-Fi Gaming, Red Wolf Eagle 13, Shori, Sung, Ezo, Azo, Curtin, Whimsical Stray, Unknown, Ooh, Lazy Link 17, Metiele Cooler 1, Axel, Bad Twins, Made the Very Average Gamer, A-Town, 1199 Boss, Bitter D, Dashron Gaming, King Pie, Blend Bob, Happy Pet Panda, Tempest, Zeta, James Watson, P10s, TS, Jose Colada, Pilka Fangirl 23, Michael Gibbous, Konosuga, Guya, Livo Cubic, Culerus, Dalton Queen, Jers, Brian Millie, Julian Warner, Dice, Carby, Abdullah, Lottie, Ren, generic white man name, Jack of the Frost, Wretched, Snivy, Ruby, IDC, Jacob, Square, DJ Monk 23, Squidwater, Rice, Smith, Gamer, Bad Dragonite, Just JM, Benny Samaru, Star S, MD with a horse, Haybell, Yeet, Micah, 626, Gaming Muse, Arbos, Illumio, Gwendolyn, Scanner 072, Andrew Frost, Speak Anonymous, Summon Sloth, Nock Nuyen, Ian Ray, Biggins, C Knight, whatever this is, Corner of the Cop, Scott Carlisle, Otherwise, Dylan Peters, Malachi Burkhart, Marshy, Avery, Koreshi, KD, Divine, Troy Phoenix 1, Fairy Fantasia, Jake Young, DC Hero, Hitmon Fry, Daniels, Eats, and April Wilson. Thank you all for being wanderers. If you would like to hear your name at the end of every single video and maybe even ruin my ability to say all the names before the end of the Heart Gold end credits and support this channel, become a member. And as always, thank you so much for watching. Don't think I'm gonna do. Please be nice to each other. I love you, and I'll see you next time. Bye!